All right. So it's the 12th day of the month of Kislev, and we are studying Sefer Shmuel, first Shmuel I, and we are in chapter 17, verse 41. And this is right before the exciting time when David put an end to Goliath, and it's just how did we get here? The Philistines, for the fourth time, decided that they want the slaves, the Jewish slaves, back, and they didn't attack us yet, but they threatened to attack us. They amassed their army, and they came straight to the heartland of Judah, and were basically, preparing themselves to round up the Jews, and put their exercise their strength and authority again, and it obviously was a result of the fact that we have a king now, King Saul, and all the Jews were paying taxes to the king, and stopped paying taxes to the Philistines, who didn't like the change of status there. So they brought their heavy gun, their hero, Goliath, who was a source of pride and was successful in several wars before. He was the one who actually captured the Ark of the Covenant a few wars ago. So he came and he was taunting the Jews and telling them, come fight with me. The rabbis are saying that he was actually so disgusting and so dismissive, and was cursing the name of God and all the Jews, and sort of telling God, you come fight with me, let's see you, the big God of the Jews, he was, the Jews were scared. The Jews were scared for one overarching reason, is because in the past 400 years, since we crossed the Jordan River and came to the land of Israel, the theme was that we need to really work within the world, within nature. We didn't have manna coming from heaven anymore. We didn't have a well traveling with us. Each and every one of us would have their individual lot, and we needed to work the lot, and we needed to bring food from the ground, to grow it, to become an agricultural society, and we needed to seemingly be like everybody else in that regard. And as a result of that, the Jews were saying, okay, if we want to be like everybody else, give us also a king. And that started that whole road down to find a king that will treat us and will lead us like all the other nations around us. And also, if we are like everybody else, when we fight wars, we have to fight like everybody else. We need to have the guns, we need to have the weapons, we need to have the training. It's not anymore. They felt that because we were told to work within nature, so now we need to, 100% within nature, and there is no room, or there is no hope, or there is not even an imagination that something supernatural, like the help of God, is going to work for us. So as a result, they went to war, and they saw, okay, let's measure up. We see this monster Goliath. We're not going to be able to, he's stronger. So they were afraid to approach him. So for 40 days, he would just come. The Jewish army and the Philistines army were parked on two hills. So he would come to the center, to the valley, and taunt the Jews and tell them, "Come on, come get me." And eventually, David saw it and convinced everybody around him, including the king, to let him fight that war, to let him confront Goliath. And after Saul told him, "Listen, you're a kid. Goliath was 10 amot tall, 10 footer, it's 6 amot, 10 feet tall, and David was a small little kid. He was 30 years old, but he looked very young and very small and very not strong. He was a redhead, and so he found those 5 stones, put them in his bag, and the sling, and a stick, and that's where we left last time. וילך הפלישתי הולך וקרב אל דוד והאיש נושא הצינה לפניו. So the Goliath, the Philistines, was walking very slowly, because if you recall in previous verses, we had a full description of what his armor was like. Hundreds of pounds of metal and very long spear and very heavy sword and a hat, a helmet that covered everything except very little. And he was he had so much stuff on him that he needed a carrier, a person to carry the shield for the legs in front of him. So he would walk, and you sort of imagine he has a boom boom, like in those Bigfoot is coming. ויאבד הפלישתי ויראה את דוד ויבזהו. So he saw that somebody is coming down, and with his big, tall stature was looking to see where is this guy. And he's looking around, and there is nobody there except this little nothing in front of him. And he right away felt full disgust and booze, and he was no regard to that little thing that's in front of him. Because he looked like a kid, and he was a redhead. I don't know, they keep saying redhead as if it's not someone to deal with, it's someone not respected. That's the way was it within his own family. He was the only redhead, and obviously there aren't that many of them in society. He looked like an outcast.
I don't know.
I'm saying you have a bunch of redheads at home. Yes, that's true.
When my wife was born, her mother was beside herself because in Europe it was considered almost like the devil. Redheaded child.
Yes, exactly. Looks like exactly, and that's the reason.
Of where they got picked on.
That's right. That's why Shmuel was not a redhead, but Shmuel was afraid of the fact that David was a redhead. As you said, he reminded him of Esau, which is the what? Admoni. Yeah. Now that means also that his blood was sort of boiling. It was red-headed temper. I don't need to tell you what that means. But he was also Yefeh Mar'eh, which means was a decent man. Was very nice, very decent, and so that didn't. He didn't pick the Goliath radar. Didn't pick David up with that characteristics. ויאמר הפלישתי אל דוד, הכלב אנוכי כי אתה בא אליי במקלות, ויקלל הפלישתי את דוד באלוקיו. So he looked at him, measured him up and down, and saw that this guy is coming to him with a stick, and that is a big, insult. to Goliath. He's coming with his heavy weapons, and this guy coming to him as if he's a dog, to shoo him like a dog. And that's right away got him crazy. And he told him, Ata ba elai. He kept telling him like 3 times, you coming upon me, sort of a premonition that he's going to be down at the end. Despite all of the math that shows that he should be on top, he is going to be down. He kept saying those words. Are you going to be coming on top of me, coming on top of me? And because he saw the insult, he started cursing David and cursed David's God. And that's when... now, he thought that originally, if you recall, because they did not want to kill the Jews, they wanted the Jews as slaves. A dead slave is not exactly a productive slave. So they wanted the slave alive. And how do you do that? You create a duel. Let's agree on a duel. Let's send 2 best guys, and whoever wins, their nation wins, and whoever loses, the nation loses. So this way, only one person needs to die, essentially. And here he felt that this is equality. This is who you sent against me, 1-on-1. Aren't you ashamed of this kind of an insult? We will see later that as a result, once we won the duel, the Philistines realized that the duel is off. There was no agreement. So therefore, once Goliath is dead, they're next in line. It's not that we're going to come and say, okay, now that we won, you'll be our slaves. We didn't agree to that condition to begin with. So,
was there a downside? Like Saul agreed that David should go lead. What if they...
The downside is that you don't negotiate with terrorists. That's the downside. Somebody who's cursing the God of the Jews, there is a clear punishment or a clear fate for that person that's written.
David was not the obvious champion.
He was not the obvious champion, right?
But Saul agreed to let him go.
So, right, he spoke to him because, and we will see in a second, because David introduced the whole concept of, yes, we have to be in the world. Yes, we have to work within nature, but we still have God on our side. And if we act the right way, if we use that weapon correctly, we'll be victorious, even though we are, the few. We're coming up. Hanukkah is coming. We're the few, and they're the many. We're the short, and they're the talls. So he right away, David, as we know, wrote Tehillim. Tehillim is the praise of God, which is a big part of davening every day. We're using the praise of God that David wrote in our prayers. He started the prayer right there. That's where he started praying. He says, and he will tell Goliath, "You coming to me with a sword? I'm coming to you with a tilim. I'm coming to you with a prayer." ויאמר פלישתי אל דוד לך אליי ואתנה את בשרך לעוף השמיים ולבהמת הארץ. So one of the things that this appearance, the way David appeared, what he did, he took him off balance. He took him off balance because he thought maybe he has some secret weapon. And he right away became crazed. He became fearful because the Philistines had previously 3 wars with the Jews, and they not all went well. And even the one that did go well ended up capturing the Ark of the Covenant. Didn't go well because the Ark wreaked havoc in their midst and killed them and caused them a lot of damage. So they were afraid, and when you saw someone sure of himself coming with a stick, maybe there's a button there somewhere that I'm not aware of. But so he tells him, and he sees also that the guy is very quick. to maneuver. And Goliath is very heavy and walking very slowly with all of the armor. So he said, come to me. Come, please approach me. And what will I do to you? I'm going to kill you essentially, and feed your flesh to the to the Ofa Shamayim, to the bird of the sky, and also to Be'emat HaSadeh. And Be'emat HaSadeh is a very strange phrase, which told David that Goliath is already off balance. There are two words in Hebrew to describe an animal. A domesticated animal is called behema, and a non-domesticated animal called chaya. Okay? Now, in the field, you have chaya. You have non-domesticated animals. At home, you have chickens and cows. That's behema. Not chicken, but the cows. So he was telling him that I'm going to feed your flesh to the to hawks and some birds that would eat flesh, and also to a domesticated animal in the field. Domesticated animals don't eat flesh. Domesticated animals are not in the field. It's like I'm going to feed your flesh to something that doesn't eat flesh. So that already told David that Goliath is afraid. He's not sure that we have an opening here. That God, this is the first step, that the first indication that he had that God is going to help us. ויאמר דוד אל הפלישתי, so David answered him, אתה בא אליי בחרב ובחנית ובכידון. You coming to me with a sword and with a spear, and kidon in modern Hebrew is a spear, but in biblical Hebrew is the helmet that he had. The helmet had the little point on top, right? So that's the kidon. So you're coming to me with all this armor. ואנוכי בא אליך בשם השם צבקות. And I'm coming to you with a prayer. I'm coming to you with the weapon with the Jewish weapon. Hashem tzvakot elokei marchot Yisrael asher cherafta. That's the God that you cursed. That's the God that I'm coming to you with. So beware that not only I have a long account with you, he too has a little bit of something to settle, because you spoke the way you spoke and your attitude was the way your attitude was. And as he sees David running around him so freely, without any inhibition because of no armor, he became heavier and heavier and heavier, and it felt to him as if he is being planted in the ground, and he couldn't move anymore. Hayom azeh. So David continues. Hayom azeh yasgercha Hashem beyadi v'ikiticha. And he tells him, this is what's going to happen. Today, God is going to round you up in my hand, and I'm going to smite you, and I'm going to behead you. I'm going to take your head off. And I'm going to feed to those birds that you wanted to feed me, right? I'm going to feed you and all of the corpses of the Philistines, the camp of the Philistines. And he corrected him, and to the animal of the field, of the ground, right, of earth. The wilde chayes, exactly. Those who really would benefit and enjoy a good piece of Philistine's flesh, right? וידעו כל הארץ כי יש אלוקים לישראל. And we are going to use this to make everybody know that the Jews have a God, to spread the name of God across the nations, and not only the nations. And this is the fringe benefit. The added benefit is that the Jews themselves, the next phrase, וידעו כל הקהל הזה, the Jews themselves will internalize and will know that Ki lo becherev v'chanit yoshia Hashem, that God, it doesn't need to redeem us in order to make us victorious. He does not need any weapons. He doesn't need a sword. He doesn't need a spear. Ki la Hashem hamilchama v'natan etchem biyadenu, because God has His ways to fight the war, and He is going to give you in our hands, and basically will perform a Kiddush Hashem, the sanctifying of God's name right here, right now. He says Yoshia. It's if you look at the letters there, it's a very funny way of writing Yoshia. There are too many letters over there because he infused in his davening a lot of letters from the name of God, from Yud Kei Vav Kei. So it has Yud Kei Vav, and then instead of the last case, he put a Yud between the Shin and the Ayin. So basically invoking the name of God several times to let us know, to let them know that this is who's coming to fight, and sort of disregard the fact that I look scrawny and redhead. You know, I'm not the one fighting here. It's God's fighting here. Vaya kikama plishti. So as the Philistines, the Goliath stood up, vayelech. He apparently it was very hard for him to stand long time with the armor. So he stood up, vayelech vayikrav likrat David, and he took the steps to go towards David. And at that point, David, vayamaher David vayaretz ha'ma'aracha likrat David. At that point, David realized that this is the time to seize the moment, and he hurried up, used his speed and his agility and flexibility, and ran towards the Philistine. Vaishlach David et yado el hakeli, and he right away put, and it's not like he had a whole plan. He made it up as he went, sort of with God's help. God put in his mind at what point to move, and at one point to put his hand in the pocket, and at one point to take the stone. And Vaikach Misham, and he took one of the 5 stones. Vayekala vayach et haplishti el mitzcho. So he aimed and he hit the Philistines in his forehead. Vatitba even b'mitzcho vayipol al panav arza, and the stone drowned in his forehead, and he fell down to the ground. Now, there is a very famous question. Most of the commentaries are talking about it. We had before a description of his armor and his helmet. And his helmet was such that it covered his forehead. And it covered, between his eyes, it covered the nose. So how does the stone get to the forehead if it's covered with a helmet? Everybody's talking about that, and there are a range of answers that they can all be correct, or some can be, some work together, some not so work together, but from the most natural to the most supernatural. One of them is saying that simply he aimed to his eye, because the eyes were not covered, and through the eye he went into the forehead from inside. Okay, because he was short, so he, from the bottom he hit the eye, and that's how it went into the eye, through the eye, into the forehead. That's answer number 1. Answer number 2 is when David was answering him and talking to him, he said, I'm going to feed you to the bird in the sky. And Goliath, from being so, off balance, looked up to the sky. When he looked up to the sky, the helmet sort of lifted, and just enough to allow a small stone to come in between the helmet and the nose, and get into the forehead. And then there is the supernatural explanation where the rabbis are saying that this is one of the places that the soft would overcome the hard. The stone, who is softer than the metal, sort of took the metal and pierced the metal and was able to go through. And there is a description in the Medrash between the stone and the metal. Sort of, the stone is saying, "Listen, I need to kill this guy. Let me in." And the metal says, "No, what do you mean, let me in? I'm stronger. I'm made to not let these kind of things in." And so the stone made a deal with the iron. It says, until now, the Brit, circumcision, was done until that moment was done with a knife of stone, with flint. Okay, Even Tzurim, with flint stone. All of the times that we mentioned the circumcision of Yoshua, circumcising the Jews before we crossed when Moshe circumcised, when Tzipporah circumcised Moshe's son as they were going to Egypt, it always mentions flintstone as the knife that they used to do it. And at this point, the stone told the iron, "Listen, let me in, and from this point on, the Jews are going to use iron to do the bris." And that's when the stone allowed the iron allowed the stone to go in, and from that point on, the bris is being performed with a knife that's not a flint knife. Imagine a flint knife would be a little bit painful.
That's not mentioned in the Brit Milah ceremony, though, is it?
I don't think so. But we know that we for years and years and years we use knives, not stones, to do that.
Is there any discussion as to why he took 5 stones when he only needed 1?
So he didn't only need one. He continued to fire. We will see it. He continued to fire more and more and more stones. The 5 stones were the symbolic of the 5 books of the Torah. He came to protect, to fight in the name of the Torah of all 5 books. So that's why he took 5 stones, and he used them all. Obviously, once the first stone penetrated and he fell, the helmet fell off his head, and it was easy to continue and hit him from all sides. Now, so the stone basically drowned in his brain, in his forehead, and therefore hit the brain. And but he was not. He died. He couldn't survive that, but he didn't die instantaneously. He wasn't dead. He was gravely injured, and he fell down on his face. Now, this is all. What?
He sustained a concussion.
It's more than a concussion. A concussion is when somebody gets hit without penetrating the skull. I mean, here the skull was penetrated pretty badly. He was implanted another brain, basically, brain of stone. So here is another odd thing that happened when someone is hit from the front. How do they fall? They fall back, right? They fall backwards. And here he fell frontwards. He fell on his face. So again, a lot of commentaries are discussing this and why. So first of all, it was because the whole war was a miracle. This was also a miracle to show that it's not really a natural way of winning a war. You hit something from one direction, despite of physics, he will fall onto that direction. That's number one. Number two, he was very, very tall, and we will see later, as David promised him, he's going to behead him, right? So David will need to go all the way to the other side. This way, he will fall and will come right here, will be very close to David. The head will be close to David. Another thing is that he fell on his face, which means he fell on his mouth. That mouth that had, that spoke against God, now is going to eat the dirt. That's another thing. And the final thing is, in those days, the Jewish high priest would walk with the breastplates. Okay, that was how the Goyim imagined that we are holding our God on our breast. That's how we're carrying our God, or a sign of God. So what they did the same thing. A lot of religions like to imitate the Jewish one for some reason. So they had a picture of their God on their breast, and that's how they went to war. And the truth is that till not modern times, but pre-modern times, the soldiers would have. I mean, if you go nowadays to England, they have on their breast, they have the name of Elizabeth, the Royal Highness Elizabeth II, right? They have it right here. So that was the way to carry their name of God. So there is a pasuk in Vayikra that says, "V'natati pigrechem al pigre gilulechem," that I'm going to give. It's talking about those who don't listen to God. It says that I'm going to give your corpses on the corpses of your God. So that's what happened when he fell on his face. His God was first on the ground, hit the ground, and then his corpse was on top of his God to make this verse come true. In any event, he fell down on his face, and at that point, David continued. Vayachzek David. So David became stronger than him, bekela ube'even, with a sling and with a stone. He continued using the sling and the stones again and again and again, and sort of got all of his cartridge, all of his magazine out onto the head of this monster. And he killed him, and he didn't even have a sword in his hand. At that point, he needed to fulfill the promise and behead Goliath. Now, this is a very unusual event, and it's something that really is not unique, but almost unique. It didn't happen many times in Jewish history where there was a dead enemy and we behead the dead enemy, and we take the head and we showed it to the world, and it wasn't common. But David needed to turn the tide. David needed to make sure that all the world, all of the people, all of the inhabitants, all of those who see and all of those who will hear about it, will know who's boss. And that was one very strong way of doing it, and that's to behead the enemy and then take the head, and he brought it later on to Yerushalayim, to which Yerushalayim at that time was not any special city, but he already had his eye on, and his mind on eventually making Yerushalayim his own city. So he brought the head to the city of Jerusalem. Anyway, now another thing that happened here is he had the most sophisticated weaponry. Goliath had most sophisticated weapons, and one of the sophisticated weapons was the way he held the sword. The sword, nowadays you have when cops walk with guns, they have on the holster, they have something to hold the gun, so somebody from behind won't be able to take the gun. So some perpetrator from behind won't be able to take the gun out. So it's designed in such a way. His holster for the sword was the same way. You needed to know how to take it out, otherwise the sword will not come out. It had a certain lock, and only he and the guy who helped him, his helper, were able to, we knew the combination, so to speak. Now, this is a very interesting thing. Who was the helper? Who was the guy that was carrying his stuff, that was helping him? So the Rabbi, the Medrash is telling us that was a gentleman by the name of Uriah HaChiti. Does the name ring a bell? What? The who?
It was a Hittite, no?
Yeah, Uriah HaChiti. Right, but who was Uriah HaChiti? No, Uriah HaChiti was the husband of Bathsheba. is one of the guys that ended up being, he wasn't Jewish, at least started not Jewish, and he became one of the warriors of David, and he became, he was married eventually to Bathsheba, and then David ended up sending him to be killed in the line of duty and taking Bathsheba as his wife. What's the story behind that story? So the story goes as follows. Then he comes, and the guy that would carry the shield was Uriah Hitti, right? He didn't kill that guy. He was just a helper. Was no threat really. So, and then he came to take the sword out. He didn't know the combination. So he tells Uriah Hitti, "Tell me the combination." He said, "Oh, I'm not going to tell you the combination. Why should I?" So he told him, "You better tell me." So he said, "Listen, I wanted to marry all my life. I wanted to marry a Jewish wife, and if you find me a Jewish wife, I'll let you. I'll give you the combination." So he said, "Okay, I'll find you one." Now that was a mistake. That was a mistake because who is David to give a Jewish wife to a Hitti, to someone who is not Jewish yet? It was so. The rabbi is saying, you promise him a wife, it's going to be your wife that he's going to get. Okay? And that was, that's the story that came later all around. So anyway, he gave
It's like a retroactive justification of one of the low points in David's life.
Yes, exactly. From the high to the low, exactly. From the highest to the lowest, they're all connected. Poetic justice. Anyway, the bottom line is that Uriah gave him the combination, and he took was able to take the sword out. Vaikach et charbo, and that was a very famous sword, by the way. That sword afterwards was placed in Nov, in the tabernacle, and that sword afterwards, when David was running away from so he was placed in the tabernacle. So when people come to the tabernacle, they will see the glory of our victory, right? God's victory. And then when he ran away from Saul, he needed a sword because he was running away with a shirt on his back. He didn't have. So he went through Nov to pick up that sword, and that's the sword that he was walking around with afterwards, using as he was running away from Saul. Anyway, so
It wasn't a huge sword?
it was a huge sword. Yeah, it was a big sword.
No problem carrying it?
David HaMelech had a lot of things that was no problem for him. He was always underestimated and always over-delivering. So he took the sword from the holster, from the holding thing, and he killed him again. Not vayamitehu. It's extra letters here. How do you say when someone is when you send the seals and they want to make sure that the guy is dead? In Hebrew, you say vidu hariga. You have to make sure that you put another bullet in their head to make sure they're dead. 100% dead. So an insurance shot, they call it, right? So that was his insurance shot. So he killed him by beheading him. He beheaded him. So the Philistines saw that their ace is down and his head is separated from his body, and they knew that the deal was off, that there is no way that now they're going to be able to escape just with some sort of a payment or will be your slaves or whatever. So they took off. Now, Vayakumu Anshe Israel v'Yehuda vayariu. So all the Jews, when they saw it, they also realized that that's their opportunity, and they followed David, and they started a war, an attack with with noise, as in those days was common to make a lot of noise. And so this was the war was in Emek HaElah, in the Elah Valley, which is south of Bet Shemesh, and they chased them all the way down to beyond Latrun, beyond Shar Hagai, to the area where you start climbing. Iowa number 1, you start climbing up. That's the Boacha Hagai, that's Shar Hagai. ועד שערי Ekron, and until the gates of their city Ekron. That's the first city of the 5 that they occupied. Now, somehow, again, the Jews did not finish the job. They didn't go into the city and destroy it and burn it and kill everybody. They chased them. Whoever was running too slow stopped running and wasn't able to run anymore. But they didn't follow them into the city to finish them up. Again, this is not our ways to retaliate and to destroy and to scorch the earth. We're Rahmanim. We have compassion, even to our enemies sometimes, unfortunately. And so we didn't follow through. ויפלו חללי פלישתים בדרך שעריים ועד גת ועד עקרון. So the whole way, the corpses of the Philistines, the road was dotted with their corpses. On the way, Sha'araim is a city that had 2 gates. I think we spoke about it when we learned about Joshua. 2 big gates. And I think Shimshon was there at one point. Anyway, so through that city until Gat and until Ekron. And then וישובו בני ישראל מדלוק אחרי פלישתים וישוסו את מחניהם. So the Jews came back from running. They ceased the chase. They stopped the chase. And then they went after the booty in the camps of the Philistines. This is the second time in not many years that we end up with a lot of stuff that used to be ours and was taken by them, and they added stuff to it, and we sort of looted it back after we won the war. That's called וישוסו. ויקח דוד את ראש הפלישתים ויביא ירושלים ואת כליו שם באוהלו. So that's when David take the head of Goliath and started walking it all around town, all around the country. An amazing thing, not common, but this is what happened when you start with the redhead. You lose your head and your head start walking around town, and so that's he was really showing the revenge that's due for someone who's cursing God. And he took it and brought it to Yerushalayim. As we said before, even though Yerushalayim was not a city of any special status at the moment, all the cities around were. Shaul was in Kiryat Yarim and Kiryat Anavim and in Giv'on and Geva. I mean, there are a lot of cities over there that were famous cities in the books of Judges and the book of Shmuel. Yerushalayim is not one of them, but David already set his eyes on the prize and took the head of Goliath there, and he put his stuff in his own tent, and then it was time to face Shaul. Okay, Shaul was there all the time, so the verse is sort of going back and forth. He went to Yerushalayim, but even before he went to Yerushalayim, the following event occurred, and that is the introduction or the very strange or very intense discussion with Shaul. וכראות שאול את דוד יוצא לקראת הפלישתי. And as Shaul saw, he was standing there on the bleachers and saw him himself, right? Shaul saw David going to fight Goliath. אמר אל אבנר שר הצבא, מי זה הנער אבנר? Who is this kid, Avner? So who was Avner? Avner was his cousin. Some say it was his uncle, but he was
David's cousin.
No, Shaul's cousin. Shaul's cousin or Shaul's uncle. And he was the head of the army for Shaul. And he was very loyal, family, blood, and he was very capable. And Shaul, we know from the beginning of the chapter, had a whole interview with David, and he hired him to play. Everybody, I mean, he had a lot of ink and a lot of pens we used and broke as they were writing the commentary to start understanding what is going on here. How come Shaul suddenly did not recognize David? To a point that one of the commentaries saying, I don't know. I can't understand what's going on here. I can tell you this explanation, that explanation, but I don't know what the heck is going on here.
It's like he's vetting
So-
him after the fact.
What?
It's like
Yeah.
he's vetting him after the fact.
So let's go through a couple of, till the rabbi comes, right? I guess a couple of answers. Number one, because when did he need David to play for him? When he was in a bad mood, when he was depressed. When he was depressed and in a bad mood, his faculties were not there, so he didn't recognize him. When he was not like that, he didn't really recognize the guy. Okay, that's one explanation. Another explanation is that he didn't really ask about him specifically, he asked about his lineage. Because if you recall, he promised to give his daughter to the victor, right? To the guy that's going to take down Goliath. Now Goliath is down. Payback. So who is this guy that I need to be his father-in-law now? So, let's research the family now. So that's a second answer. Another answer is, as David shined and was able to overcome Goliath, he was unrecognizable. It was a whole new David that was coming through. So who is this again? It wasn't the guy that was just playing violin for him. It's a different setting, different look. And then finally, he asked several. The Medrash is saying several things. Number one, he asked a question about his lineage. Which son of Yehuda does he come from? Yehuda had two sons, Peretz and Zerach. They were twins. Zerach was the firstborn, but he didn't come out first. He was supposed to be the firstborn, but Peretz fought him over and came out first. So Zerach got his hand out, right? And they tied some string, some red string on his hand, right? And he took the hand out, and then Peretz came out without the string, and then Zerach came out with the string, with the piece of string. So they called him Peretz. Why did you barge in? And from that point on, they knew that this is. The rabbis knew and the prophets knew that this is the son of Yehuda, where the king is going to come from. The king is going to come from somewhere that is not. He's going to take his place. If there is a door to go through, he's going to go through that door first. We'll talk about the rest of it next time.